This video, and all of its contents, including any opinions expressed by the narrator, are strictly for entertainment purposes only, and is not intended in any way as a substitute for professional services and consultation from a licensed therapist, doctor, attorney, or other licensed professional service provider. Each person must make their own life decisions, and those decisions are theirs. Welcome back to Find Your Alpha, one of your favorite channels on YouTube, and today we've got another great story for you, and the theme I want to have you watch out for in this story is, as the saying goes, the grass is not always greener on the other side. It is greenest where it is watered. This also applies to relationships. In the case of today's story, some women will never be satisfied, so with those women, you've got to stop trying and just move on. Now, let's get into the story, and you can see the title coming up on your screen, and the woman says, I cheated on Tim with Jim, got pregnant and married Jim, but now I want Tim back. Am I crazy? And I'm going to answer that for you, original poster. Yes, you are crazy, and we're going to find out why in this story, and this dates back to May of 2021. She says, hello there. I wanted to tell my story to potentially help other women and to solicit suggestions that might help me move forward. I'm in the final stages of divorcing my husband of 9 years. Call him Jim, a 34-year-old male. For this story, call me and 28 female. We have 2 daughters, ages 8 and 7. I married Jim 3 months after we met, and we had our first daughter 6 months later. Now, look at that again, folks. They got married 3 months after meeting. I came to realize shortly after we married that our relationship was one of misplaced lust that quickly disappeared after the realities of marriage and children set in. As I look back on it now, marrying Jim was a mistake, save for our 2 beautiful daughters. I realized the love of my life was actually Tim, 28 male. Tim was mine, all mine at one time, but I drove him away. Here's my backstory. Tim and I went to school together and started officially dating when we were 16. We were good friends since kindergarten and officially became a couple at the age of 16 after going to a dance together. From that point until we broke up 3 years later, we were inseparable and were deep in love. Tim was my first everything, and I mean everything. My everything until I was intoxicated by a burst of brief yet irresistible lust. It all happened in the waiting room of a tire store back in July of 2012, Monday, July 16th to be exact. Now, when I first read this story, I thought, oh my goodness, don't tell me she made out with someone in the waiting room of a tire shop, and that's not the case as you'll see. She says, it was there I met Jim. I was getting new front tires for my car, and Jim was there getting new tires for his pickup. It was just he and I in the waiting room area, and we sat across from each other. At first, we just ignored each other. Then Jim spoke up and said, excuse me, I'd like to introduce myself. After the introductions, he said, forgive me for saying this, but you're the most beautiful thing I've ever laid eyes on. This made me blush and gave me goosebumps. Hearing him say that made my spine tingle from the top of my neck all the way down to the base of my back. So, you hear women often say, hey, he gave me the tingles. Well, here's a good example of that. We talked non-stop from that point until his truck was done. Before leaving, he asked me if I was single, and guess what she told him? Yes, I'm just dating at the moment, which was a complete and total lie. With that, he asked me out the following night, and I accepted. The next evening, I drove to his place, and we went out for pizza at a local shop around the corner from his apartment. I had never been to this shop before, but my boyfriend, Tim, had gotten pizza there several times in the past. When we finished eating, we walked back to his apartment. It was on the second floor of a garage on an alley behind his landlord's house. He invited me up, and I accepted. I knew what I was doing, and what I was about to do was wrong, but I couldn't resist the temptation. When we got upstairs, I think we said maybe 3 words, and our clothes came off. We spent the next 2 hours in his bed. Looking back, I don't know why I did it. How many times do you hear these women in these stories saying, I don't know why I did it? Not to knock Jim, but he was a notch below Tim in terms of looks, intelligence, future earnings, and even bedroom skills. I felt no love for him. However, I couldn't resist the lure of being with another man. So, this kind of dispels that myth out there that if you get a woman, and you are her first, that you've got her forever. This happened on Tuesday, and for the next 2 nights, we repeated the same, except we skipped dinner and just went straight to his bed. During the times Jim and I were together, Tim was busy taking evening classes, working towards his bachelor's. Since Jim lived in the next town over, I foolishly thought I could juggle the affair with Jim, along with my relationship with Tim. That didn't happen. After our Thursday meeting, Jim convinced me to join him for a shake at a local dairy barn. The establishment is very popular and has a large parking lot that is always full of cars, motorcycles, and classic car owners on warm summer evenings. It's a really busy place. Jim and I got shakes and sat at the picnic tables for 45 minutes or so, and then got in his truck to leave. As we were waiting in line to exit the parking lot, Tim and two of his college friends exited a car right beside us and began walking towards the restaurant and right past Jim's truck. I didn't see Tim when he exited the car, as Jim and I were kissing at the time. When I pulled back from the kiss into the passenger seat, I looked out the open passenger window and straight at Tim. The empty look on his face I will never forget. He just slowly called my name. I was so nervous I just laughed and turned to look at Jim. I know to Tim he probably viewed it as me laughing in his face, but I wasn't. It was just a nervous reaction. Jim didn't hear Tim call my name and pulled forward, then exited the parking lot. Within a minute I was getting calls from Tim and I turned off my phone. When I went back to Jim's place, kissed him, and then left in my car, I turned my phone back on and had multiple voicemails and texts from Tim. I texted him and said let's talk tomorrow. He insisted we talk right then. He called me and I answered. This is where I made a terrible mistake. Well, I think you've already made the terrible mistake before. This may be an additional terrible mistake is how you should word it. She said instead of being apologetic and contrite, I instead was dismissive and angry. Tim asked me what was going on and I told him I was just out with a new friend. Tim said I saw you kiss the guy. He's more than a friend. He asked if I had slept with him and I said it's none of your business. Now can you imagine your girlfriend of 3 years telling you it's none of your business? Tim just said it's none of my business. Okay, and ended the call. Good for you, Tim. When I got home my mom asked me where I was and where Tim was. I told her I was just out with a friend and Tim was out with his friends. She asked Tim wasn't with you. I made up some excuse and then went to take a shower before getting in bed. In the shower the reality of what I'd done hit me like an asteroid. I realized that I had likely just destroyed my relationship with Tim. I tried calling and texting him telling him I was sorry, but he didn't respond. That night I slept very little and the next day I set out to find Tim. Normally he's at home studying on Friday morning, but he wasn't there. I looked for him all day along with numerous calls and texts with no response. Friday evening I called Tim's mom. She answered and I asked if she knew where Tim was. She just said he was out with friends and thought I was with him. I told her I wasn't and she seemed surprised. I didn't get into what was going on and just asked her to have him call me when he gets home and she said she would. Tim never contacted me and I didn't sleep at all on Friday night. On Saturday morning I headed over to Tim's house at 8:30 a.m. His mom has a tradition of cooking breakfast for their entire family at 7 a.m. every Saturday and I attended these Saturday breakfasts for the last 3 years. I didn't want to show up and cause a scene so I waited an hour or so until after the breakfast. When I arrived at Tim's house I saw all the cars from his family in the driveway and on the street. Since they treated me as part of the family, I normally just walked in, but when I tried the door handle it was locked. I knocked on the door and heard rumbling from inside and saw the curtain move. Then Tim's mom opened the door while I held the screen door open. I assumed she was going to welcome me in, but instead she moved forward and came out on the porch and closed the door behind her. She asked me, "What are you doing here in?" I said I was here to see Tim. She told me he doesn't want to see you now. I told her I need to see him to tell him I'm sorry and to tell him how much I love him. With that she just gave me a mean look and said that's not a good idea. I think you should leave, so old Mama Bear here is stepping in and saying, "Oh, you're not going to do my son dirty." I couldn't believe she was treating me like that as I viewed her as my second mother and we have such a good relationship. With that she just turned around and went back into the house and I ran to my car crying. Tim called me an hour later and we talked. I wanted to talk in person but he declined and told me to tell him the truth and I did. I told him everything. Did you really tell him everything? I don't know. How I met Jim, how many times I was with him and what we did. I next explained that it meant nothing to me. Again, here's another woman saying the affair I had meant nothing. If it means nothing, why do it and blow up your whole life? I told him that I love him and only him and always will. I told him the lure of experiencing what it would be like to be with another man overtook me and I temporarily lost control of my senses. I said I'd never do something like that again and would be faithful to him forever. To make a long story short, Tim broke up with me over the phone. 3 years down the drain just like that. He didn't fight for me. He just ended it without remorse. Well, why would he fight for you? You're a cheater and you're somebody he can't trust. You're not worth fighting over. I told him I was not going to give up and that I would fight for us. He just told me not to waste my time. Later that day I spoke with Jim and put our relationship on ice, and for the next 3 weeks tried everything to win Tim back. During this time Jim was doing the same with me. He was relentless in his pursuit and expressed his love for me multiple times. Now notice here what she says. She says I called Jim and put our relationship on ice. Notice she didn't say I broke up with him, and the reason for that is if things don't work out with Tim, the guy she really wants, well, she doesn't want to let go of Jim, so she's just putting that relationship on ice. Now the interesting thing here too is I gather from this story, and she doesn't specifically say it, I don't think this Jim knew that she was in a serious relationship with Tim, because up front she told him, oh, I'm just dating around, you know, that type of thing, so she was totally dishonest with this Jim as well. Everything came to a head on August 19th of 2012 when I missed my period. I did a pregnancy test a week later and it was positive. I did a second test a few days later and it too was positive. I was pregnant with Jim's baby. How did I know? Tim used protection and Jim didn't. Well, hats off to you, Tim, for being smart, and Jim, of course you made a big mistake here, buddy, and it's going to impact you for the rest of your life. Instead of notifying Jim, now listen to what she does here. I called Tim and left him a message informing him I was pregnant. In the message I told him we really needed to talk as I was unsure what to do. She says yes, as I look back on this it was a terrible thing for me to do. Tim never replied and just avoided me, as did his family, so eventually I told my mom about my situation. She became very angry with me. She loved Tim like a son and couldn't believe I'd cheat on him and get pregnant. Mom raised me single-handedly as my dad left 3 months after I was born and never returned, so here's another woman with daddy issues. He passed away a few years ago. I met him one time about a few months prior to his death when he requested to see me to apologize. Over the years Mom preached to me that she didn't want me to repeat her mistake and to find a quality man and do things traditionally, but she says, and she leaves it hanging there. The big but as well, she just basically is repeating what her mother did. Mom insisted on meeting Jim. I told her I was no longer seeing him and never wanted to see him again. I then told Mom that I didn't want to go through with the pregnancy and just wanted to put this whole thing behind me. She screamed at me and said I cannot do that and she will not let me do that. She said if I didn't want the baby she'd adopt it and raise it herself. After much discussion she convinced me to meet with Jim and tell him about the pregnancy. Later that afternoon Jim came to our house and I told him with Mom by my side. He didn't react like I expected. Instead he started jumping around and screaming with joy. He picked me up and kissed me and then kissed and hugged my mom. Needless to say, Mom immediately liked him. He then asked me to marry him right there in front of Mom. Jim, listen, I know you got yourself into a predicament, but marrying this girl just a few weeks after meeting her, what are you thinking, my man? His reaction shouldn't have surprised me, as this is his personality. To speed things up, we were married 3 months later and our first daughter was born 6 months after. Mom grew to love Jim as he is a terrific father, husband, and son-in-law. The problem is I didn't love Jim in a romantic sense. I was still in love with Tim. The initial lust I felt for Jim quickly evaporated after I became pregnant. I had no passionate love for him, just the feeling of obligation because I was about to have a child with him. He was such a great father, I thought having a second child would make me grow to love him. So we did, but it didn't. I felt just the same. I wanted so much to love him that way, but I just didn't and couldn't. We both are great parents and I do love Jim very much, but not as a husband/lover, more as a father figure. That is terrible, guys. Whenever a woman, whether it's your wife or girlfriend, starts to think of you more as a father figure, that means she's fallen out of passionate love with you, and there's a very high degree of likelihood that she is going to stray and cheat. You always want to be in her mind as that lover, not a father figure. That is bad. She says it's been like this for the entire 9 years we've been married. I've kept it buried deep inside, but about a year ago I confessed this to Jim and it just broke his heart. Well, of course it would if you're putting on a show for 9 years and then you lay this information on him. He's going to be destroyed. He thought I was happy like he was. When I told him I wasn't, he just broke down. Again, he's been a loyal, loving husband and a wonderful, the best father, but I just have no spark with him. I don't know exactly why that is. One thing, he's not ambitious from a career standpoint. He loves his job, works hard, and is a good provider, but he hasn't done anything to advance. He says he loves his job just as it is, as it gives him the perfect work-life balance. Well, what's wrong with that? If he's a good provider and he's got a job where he has a good work-life balance, that's an ideal situation, but you're not satisfied with that. The other thing, he's not adventurous. He just loves spending time as a family. Well, he's a family man. What's wrong with that? Which I do too, but I'd like more excitement in my life. I think I benchmark him against Tim, which isn't fair. I still follow Tim's life on social media. He's still not married, but dates a lot of women. He's now a VP at the financial firm where he works. He's also constantly traveling and hiking. Just last year he was in Italy, Africa, and even went up to the Arctic Circle. He's very athletic and is in better shape now than he was when we were together. Jim, not so much. So she's really just trying to pull this poor husband of hers down. Family life has made him somewhat lazy when it comes to exercise, and his food choices are not great for a man of his age. As such, he's put on quite a bit of weight around his midsection. He's not obese in any way, but I would say he's definitely rocking a dad bod. I don't mind it, but I just wish he'd do more to stay in shape and improve his health. Yes, you do mind it, or you wouldn't have said this. I know these are not deal-breaker issues, but they all add up, and bottom line, I'm just not happy, so I've decided to divorce. Jim fought hard to prevent this, but eventually he just gave up last month and accepted it. Smart move, Jim, because you know what, this woman is toxic. I can tell she's toxic. We agreed to part amicably and are going to be terrific co-parents. I'm actually very excited about the potential of starting anew and finding true love. I'm still young enough to have 1 to 2, maybe 3 additional children, and would like to find a man who's willing to build a beautiful life and family with me. I know he's out there, but as long as I stay married, I'll never find him. Oh my goodness, that hurts, man. That is a terrible statement. A terrible statement to make. My mom and my entire family are totally against what I'm doing, as are all my friends. They love Jim and think he's a great guy, which he is. It's just that we're not made for each other beyond being parents. Please let me know what you think of my situation. I plan to read all of the responses and just may reply to you if you're lucky. Sincerely, Anne. Oh, and my goodness, and now here's some responses she got from the community, and needless to say, she deserved it, but she got blasted. Here's the first one from a woman. She says, "Where do I begin? You are the most selfish and self-centered person I've ever seen on here. Good God, woman, your husband sounds like a gem. Most women would give anything to have a loyal, hardworking husband who loves them unconditionally and is a great father. What more do you want? Money doesn't buy happiness, nor does traveling. Grow up." Then here's one from a guy. He says, "The way I see it, women like you should come with a warning label. In your story you write about how you totally crushed the souls of 2 men and have no remorse for doing so. With you it's all about me, 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 me. I'm glad Jim agreed to divorce you. I hope he eventually finds a good woman who is worthy of his love and forgets you ever existed." And then finally, here's another one from a woman. She says, "Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. I once felt like you and divorced my husband of 6 years when I was 28. That was 23 years ago, and I've never remarried and never had any children. Every day I regret leaving him. I mean every day, from the time I wake to the time I go to bed. Fix what's wrong with you. Get counseling, and I'm sure you'll come to appreciate what you've got." Amen there. And now I want to encourage you, if you're liking what you hear, hit that like button. That'll help move this video up on the YouTube algorithm and get it seen all over the world. And now on with our story. And now she's got a series of updates here. The first one was from October of 2021. So just a few months later, she says, "Sorry for the delay in responding. I am officially divorced." Look how happy she is. "Jim and I are still best friends and have 50-50 custody. I kept the house." So here's poor Jim working his tail off, doing everything for his family. And then of course the divorce comes, and the wife keeps the house and the wife keeps 50% of everything. And he's probably paying alimony, even though it doesn't say that in here. But I'm sure he is, because she's not working. Unbelievable. She says, "I kept the house and the kids primarily stay with me. But Jim is free to come over whenever he wants. Nothing has really changed from that standpoint, and our girls are happy they still see their daddy every day. I'm now about to embark on my next chapter, and I'm super excited. I read and appreciate all the responses to my original post, but I have to disagree with you. Yes, Jim is a wonderful man. He's the best, but he's just not right for me. I had to do this for myself, or I'd end up at 60 years old looking back at my life and kicking myself for not taking the chance to find true happiness. I've gotten strength from reading success stories from women who've done what I'm doing with successful outcomes. Oh my goodness. Some never found another life partner, but all of them found happiness and fulfillment. Sure they did. I'm going to do the same. My first plan of action is to launch a Hail Mary and contact Tim to let him know I'm free and see if he may be interested in restarting our relationship. He has a hiking blog on FB with over 1,300 members. All of his contact information is listed there, including his email, so I plan to send him a detailed message expressing my feelings and see what I get back. As I stated in my original post, Tim is the true love of my life, and if things were to work out for us a second time, it would be like a fairy tale come true. Wish me luck, and while I can tell you, and I'm not going to wish you luck because Tim would be crazy to take you back. Now here's her update from December 21st. So a couple months later, she says my outreach to Tim did not go well. He did respond, but basically told me in so many words, thanks, but no thanks, get lost. My heartfelt email to him was over 14,000 characters, and I poured my heart out. Meanwhile, his response back to me was a short, cold note. Below is the actual text of his message. Now here's his message. He says, now look at this, he says, Dear Mrs. Blank. So he's calling her by her proper name. He's not even referring to her by her first name. He says, thank you for your detailed message. I'm sorry to hear about your divorce. While I have no interest in meeting with you and re-establishing a friendship, I do however wish you, your husband, and your children a life of health, happiness, and fulfillment. Sincerely, Tim, and he puts his last name, so he's keeping real arm's distance here from her, like, hey, I really don't even know you, lady, and I'm just responding to you like I would from a general inquiry to my hiking blog. Unbelievable. What was she expecting to get back from him? It took me 2 full weeks to get over Tim's response, but now I'm at peace with it and realize he's gone from my life forever. I'm now concentrating on finding a new love, but I'm having difficulty finding serious men. A friend fixed me up with her cousin who's also divorced, but there was absolutely no chemistry. I've also set up a couple dating profiles on dating sites. Right after setting up the profiles, I received 97 likes and things looked promising. However, none of these men were serious about dating and relationships. Basically, all of them were looking for a hookup or a friends with benefits partner. Even though I specified I was only interested in a serious relationship, there were 3 men so far that seemed sincere, and I met each of them for a drink. On the phone, these guys said they wanted a relationship and were fine with dating a woman with kids. Then when I met them in person, it turns out each of them were not serious at all and were just looking to score. What's wrong with men today? What am I doing wrong? Where should I go to meet quality men? I've tried church, coffee shops, the library, and even bars, but nothing. The only sincere approaches I've gotten have been from older men, but I preferably want someone my age, up to 40 maximum. When I'm out shopping, I'm always on the lookout for a sweet guy, but nothing. Help me. I'm starting to think there's something wrong with me. Thanks in advance for your replies, Anne. Well, and you're getting a taste of the modern dating world. It's a jungle out there, and especially for a divorced woman with 2 small kids, your chances of finding a high-quality man is next to zero. Zero, I'm telling you. And now here's a few responses she got back from the community. First one from a woman. She says, my advice to you is to get on your knees with hat in hand and beg your husband to take you back. What high-value man is going to want a woman with 2 young children? Well, that's what I just said, who also happens to be a cheater. You need to act fast, as your husband is truly a high-value man, and I predict he will not be single for long. Next one here is from a man. He says, all divorced women with kids on dating sites eventually end up settling for a friends with benefits arrangement, and many just start having random hookups out of sheer loneliness. You've got to understand that no matter how hot you think you are hot for one thing only, and it's not a serious relationship and definitely not marriage. You will soon find this out. And then finally, here's another reply from a woman. She says, you'll never find another man like your husband. I don't care where you look or how many dates you go on. I still don't understand why you left him. Everything you listed out makes no sense. Also, you say you love him, but not romantically, yet your relationship began with a lust-filled affair. Come on, I predict within 6 months you'll be begging him to take you back. And now for her final update, and you can see the update is from February 22nd of 2022. Where do I begin? As many of you predicted, I got a rude awakening entering today's modern dating world as a 29-year-old single mother of two. There are no men out there who are looking for a serious relationship. At least I haven't found any. Have men always been like this, or have things just gotten bad? This casual stuff is just not healthy. Right after my divorce last October, I had so much hope and promise for the future, but that quickly disappeared as I went through the holidays without Jim. I started feeling depressed on New Year's Eve as I spent the night alone with my daughters. While I loved being with them and we had fun together, it was then I started missing my husband really bad. I mean really bad. I got through it and moved on. I was doing okay until Valentine's Day, when the feeling returned even stronger than on New Year's Eve. Then this past Saturday, reality hit me hard and woke me up. I now know who I am. Who I am meant to be with and what I have to do. One of my male cousins got married on Saturday and I, along with my husband, was invited. My cousin is good friends with Jim. He told me he was inviting Jim and a guest, and I had no problem with that. The day before the wedding, Jim called to tell me he would be bringing a date to the wedding. He said he had been dating a woman for the last 6 weeks and our daughters already met her and they all get along well. I was shocked by this, as my daughters never said anything to me. I asked if he told them to keep this from me and he said of course not. They probably didn't think anything of it. When I asked him who it was, he told me her name and I again was surprised. This woman is a tomboy type who works as a manager at our local Wally World, and you know what Wally World is. Everybody shops at Wally World. I don't know her personally, but she is always very friendly and outgoing when I've seen her at the store. A friend of mine is friends with her sister, so I called my friend to talk about this situation. My friend said she wasn't aware that Jim was dating her, but asked if I'd seen her lately. I said no, and she proceeded to tell me that she looks completely different now. She's changed her hairstyle, wears makeup, and in more feminine enhancing clothing. She said she is absolutely beautiful. Saturday came and Jim didn't attend the church ceremony, but he and his new girlfriend came to the reception. When they came and they sat across the dance floor from us, and he walked over to kiss our daughters and say hello to me, my mom, and my extended family. When he turned to walk back to rejoin his girlfriend, it was then that I realized what a big mistake I made divorcing him. I also realized that I may have lost him forever. After eating dinner, my girls joined Jim and his girlfriend, as our plan was for them to eat dinner with me and then to eat cake and dance with their dad. Jim, his girlfriend, and my daughters spent the entire night dancing. They never sat out one song. One thing I noticed is Jim never looked my way through the entire reception. My man Jim, all of his attention was on his new girlfriend and his daughters. He didn't care about Ann at all. And of course was looking for him, probably to look over at her with puppy eyes and sad eyes, but old Jim was out there having a good old time, and he's got this beautiful new girlfriend now. Jim is saying, hey, you know what, this single life ain't too bad here. I got my daughters and I got my new girlfriend, and my wife, who is really like a drag on me, is out of my life now. This feels pretty good. That night when I got home and put the girls to bed, I stayed up reliving the night and thinking about the last 9 years. I came to the realization that it was Jim who was truly the love of my life, not Tim or anyone else. It was clear I took Jim for granted and didn't appreciate the beautiful thing we had until he was gone. I know now I must do everything to win back his love and trust. Good luck on that one, lady. When he comes over to pick up the girls on Monday evening, I'm going to talk with him about getting back together. Now listen to what she says next. I plan to tell him how much I love him and will ask him to move back in with us. My girls will be so happy. I don't care if we get remarried. I just want to be his partner for life and have more children with him. I know I've been all over the place with my feelings in these posts, but I'm 100% sure who and what I want now. I'm sending out thanks to all of you for your replies, your words of encouragement, and the many kicks in the ASS. I really needed that, and you were right. Stay well, my friends. And well, that's the end of her story. And let me just start out from the beginning. I'm going to go back to the beginning, and I'm going to say to Mr. Tim out there. Tim, you handled the situation right. You dated this girl for 3 years. You wore protection. You focused on getting your college degree. You were preparing yourself for life. And eventually, you know what? After 3 years, even though you were her first, she showed you her true colors and you immediately cut her off. That was the right thing to do. So Tim, you handled your situation very well, and it sounds like you're living a pretty good life. Now for Jim. You can tell just from this whole story that Jim is a very impulsive guy. Sounds like a very nice guy, a very fun guy to be around. He's just a bundle of energy, you know. But Jim, being impulsive, he got himself in the deep end of the pool right out of the gate. Number 1, he meets this girl and he has unprotected sex with her and he gets her pregnant and then he marries her all within like 90 days. I mean, you just don't do that. Big mistakes there, Jim. And I'm sure he probably realizes that now. The next thing I would say to Jim is, Jim, sounds like you're a great father. You're a hard worker. You've got everything going in your life now. And if I were you, I would not get back with my ex-wife. She's your ex-wife for a reason. Right now, she's got her sights totally set on you. But what's going to happen with her in 6 months when she sees somebody else that might be more attractive to her or might be a richer man or a guy with a better job? Is she just going to jump to that guy? So my suggestion to you, Jim, is keep doing what you're doing. Enjoying your new life. Enjoying life with your girls and enjoying life with your new girlfriend. What I would do in your case is you need to do a self-assessment of yourself. Look deep inside. Find out your flaws. Fix those flaws and then move forward with your life. So those are my thoughts on this story. Let me know what your thoughts were. How do you think Jim and Tim handled the situation? Have you ever encountered something like this? Tell us about it. Some of my favorite parts of these videos are reading all of your comments. They're terrific. Also, hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. Share it with your friends and please subscribe to this great channel and I will talk to you. The moment I stepped into that cozy, dimly lit cafe, a shiver of excitement ran through me. There he was, Alex, sitting at a corner table, his eyes lighting up the room more than the fancy chandeliers ever could. I hadn't seen him in years, yet there he was, unchanged, with that same adventurous spark I remembered. Sarah, he greeted, his voice wrapping around me like a warm hug. That moment, I knew I was about to stir the pot of my too-perfect life. Married to Michael, the embodiment of success, I had everything a woman could dream of. A sprawling house, luxury cars, glamorous parties. Yet, standing there with Alex, I felt a rush I hadn't felt in years. We talked for hours, laughing and reminiscing, and I felt alive, truly alive. It was intoxicating. In the days that followed, I found myself thinking about Alex more than I dared to admit. Our meetings became more frequent, each moment spent with him filling me with a sense of freedom and excitement I hadn't felt with Michael in years. My marriage, once a source of pride, now felt like a gilded cage. The decision came on a restless night. Lying next to Michael, I realized our conversations had become transactions, our laughter a memory. I needed more. I wanted the passion, the adventure I felt with Alex. So, I made up my mind. I was going to leave Michael for Alex. The thought was terrifying yet thrilling. The confrontation with Alex was nothing like I had imagined. I had rehearsed my speech, expecting open arms and shared dreams. Instead, I was met with shock and rejection. Sarah, I'm your friend, but this. I don't feel that way about you, Alex stammered, his words slicing through me like ice. I stood there, numb, as my fantasy crumbled around me. Returning to Michael was my only option, yet the man who once promised to stand by me in sickness and in health couldn't look me in the eye. I can't, Sarah, you broke us, he said, his voice void of the warmth I once adored. The door to our home, our life together, closed with a finality that left me breathless. My new reality was a cramped apartment, a stark contrast to the life I had left behind. The loneliness was suffocating, my only company the echoes of my choices. Friends became strangers, avoiding my calls, whispering about my downfall. My family's disappointment was palpable, their words of comfort laced with judgment. I had become the architect of my own misery, a reality I faced with each passing day. I never imagined desperation could feel so suffocating, like being trapped in a room with walls inching closer by the second. That's me, Sarah, clawing for a sliver of hope, dialing Michael's number for the umpteenth time only to be met with the cold, impersonal beep of a call rejected. Each attempt to reach out, each message sent, swallowed by the void he's placed between us. Blocked on all platforms, he's made his message crystal clear. Michael's moved on, and I'm nothing but a ghost from his past. But fate has a twisted sense of humor, doesn't it? At Jenna's engagement party, amidst the buzz of laughter and clinking glasses, I see him. Michael, he's there, looking every bit the part of the successful businessman I fell in love with, but now there's an ice-cold barrier in his eyes. Our accidental eye contact is a silent battle. His gaze cuts through me, unyielding and distant. Sarah, he nods, the greeting void of any warmth. It's a dismissal, a clear sign he's closed the chapter on us. My heart sinks, the rejection stings sharper in the flesh. Work used to be my escape, my domain where I reigned supreme. But lately, it's been anything but. My focus is shattered. My performance, a shadow of its former excellence. Sarah, this isn't like you. My boss's words echo in my head, a warning that I'm skating on thin ice. The fear of losing my job adds another layer to the mountain of anxiety I'm already under. Then the letters start coming. At first, they seem like a cruel joke, anonymous notes hinting at secrets only a few know. But as they pile up, their tone darkens, each message more menacing than the last. "We know what you did," one reads, sending chills down my spine. My mind races. Could it be Michael? Alex? Who else knows my sins so intimately? Paranoia becomes my constant companion. I scrutinize every glance, every whisper, wondering if they're behind the letters. It's maddening, this feeling of being watched, judged by an unseen jury. In a moment of desperation, I reach out to Alex, hoping against hope he might shed some light. But the door is slammed shut with his terse reply, "Sarah, you've made your bed. I want no part in this drama." Rejection, again, this time from the man I thought I wanted over everything else. The climax of this twisted saga comes unexpectedly. Another letter, but this one bears a signature, Emily, Michael's new partner. The realization hits me like a ton of bricks. Emily, the woman who's taken my place by Michael's side, is my tormentor. She knew about the affair, my betrayal, and this has been her way of exacting revenge. The world seems to spin as I absorb the gravity of my situation. Here I am, ensnared in a web of my own making, facing the consequences of my actions. Michael, the man I left everything for, now sees me as nothing more than a distant memory, a mistake to be forgotten. My job, once my pride, now teeters on the brink of collapse under the weight of my personal life spilling over. And Emily, the woman scorned, revels in my downfall, pulling strings from the shadows. In the thick of a relentless night, my world unraveled at the seams, thread by bitter thread. There I was, standing outside the sleek downtown bar, the chill of the evening biting through my jacket, waiting for Emily, the woman who unwittingly became the cornerstone of my ruin. "Sarah, this obsession with Michael, it's got to stop." Emily's voice sliced through the cold air, her words edged with a firmness that brooked no argument. I had rehearsed this confrontation 1,000 times in my mind, each scenario ending with Emily crumbling under the weight of my accusations. Yet, standing before her, the reality was starkly different. "You don't understand, Emily. This isn't just about him. It's about fairness." I stammered, my voice less confident than I had imagined. Emily's laugh was short, devoid of humor. "Fairness? You're talking about fairness after everything you've done?" Her scorn was a physical slap, the irony of my quest for justice not lost on me. Fueled by desperation and a sense of injustice, I had embarked on a dangerous game, weaving a web of lies and rumors intended to tarnish Emily's reputation. Social media became my weapon of choice, each post a carefully crafted grenade lobbed into her life. But my plans, however cunning, were not foolproof. Betrayal came from where I least expected it. A so-called friend who, in a twist of fate, revealed my machinations to Michael. The fallout was catastrophic. Michael's confrontation was the final nail in the coffin of our already buried relationship. "I can't even look at you, Sarah. What you've done, it's unforgivable," he had said, the finality in his voice echoing in my ears long after our conversation ended. His words were a clear delineation of where we stood, worlds apart and forever divided. The aftermath of my actions was swift and brutal. My professional life, once a source of pride and accomplishment, crumbled as my performance plummeted. The warning from my boss was a mere formality, a prelude to the inevitable dismissal that followed. In the span of weeks, my life transformed into a cautionary tale, once a respected professional with a vibrant social life, now a pariah, shunned by those who once called me friend. The isolation was suffocating, a constant companion in the empty apartment that felt too large, too quiet. The echoes of my choices haunted me, a relentless specter from which there was no escape. There was no solace in solitude, no wisdom gleaned from reflection, only the bitter taste of regret and the crushing weight of loneliness. This chapter of my life, marked by vengeance and downfall, was a testament to the folly of my actions. In my blind quest for retribution, I had lost everything that once mattered. The job that provided both livelihood and identity was gone. the man I convinced myself I loved, forever out of reach. And my reputation, once untarnished, now irreparably stained. In the deafening silence of my isolation, I realized the harsh truth. In seeking to destroy Emily, I had only succeeded in destroying myself. My story, a stark reminder of the price of vengeance, was a narrative devoid of heroes, only cautionary tales and shattered lives. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you do, please take a moment to hit that like button, it really helps me out and lets me know you appreciate the content. Also, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. Subscribing is a great way to stay updated with all the latest videos and to be part of our growing community. It's quick, it's free, and it ensures you won't miss out on any upcoming content. So go ahead, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Your support means a lot and keeps this channel going. Thanks for watching. The moment I stepped into the dimly lit room, the air felt charged, like a storm was about to break. This is it, I whispered to myself, the words barely escaping my lips. The desperation of the past few months had led me here, standing on the precipice of change, or so I hoped. Clutching the classified section of the local newspaper like a lifeline, I dialed yet another number, my heart pounding with a mix of hope and fear. Hello? A voice on the other end answered, brisk and businesslike. Hi, I saw your ad for the administrative position. I'm Sarah, and I'm very interested, I replied, trying to inject a confidence into my voice that I hadn't felt in weeks. The conversation that followed was a familiar dance of questions and carefully curated answers, but this time something felt different. There was a glimmer of hope, a slight warmth in the voice on the other end that hadn't been there before. We'll be in touch, they said, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I allowed myself to believe it might be true. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. Just as I started to envision a path forward, the shadows of my past crept back, determined to pull me down. Emily, with her perfectly crafted veneer of innocence, was behind it all. The whispers at cafes, the sidelong glances in the street, the closed doors, it was her. She was everywhere and nowhere, a ghost haunting my every step, orchestrating my downfall with a precision that left me breathless. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks one cold morning when yet another job opportunity vanished into thin air, the employer's voice cold and distant over the phone. We've heard some troubling things, Sarah. We're going to have to go in a different direction. The line went dead, and the silence that followed was deafening. Enough was enough. Fueled by a mixture of rage and desperation, I confronted Emily in the most public way I knew, social media. Calling her out, demanding an end to her vendetta, but I underestimated her, and the confrontation spiraled out of control, culminating in a face-to-face showdown that was nothing short of explosive. Words were weapons, and we wielded them without mercy, drawing a crowd that thirsted for drama like it was water in a desert. The altercation ended with flashing lights and handcuffs, our heated exchange now evidence in a case that seemed as surreal as it was nightmarish. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Overnight, my name became synonymous with scandal, the details of our fight splashed across every screen and whispered in every corner. Michael's statement of support for Emily was the final nail in the coffin of our shared past. With a few carefully chosen words, he erased what little dignity I had left, publicly declaring his allegiance to her, to their life without me. The legal fees piled up, a mountain of debt that I had no hope of conquering. My savings, once a safety net, now lay in ruins, spent on a defense that did little to stem the tide of public opinion. The apartment I had clung to, a modest space that was my last bastion of independence, slipped through my fingers, forcing me into a reality I could have never imagined, a cramped, dingy room in a part of the city I had always avoided. The job hunt became my daily torment, a Sisyphean task that left me exhausted and demoralized. Each rejection was a reminder of how far I had fallen, of the chasm between the life I once had and the shadow of existence I now occupied. As I lay in the darkness of my new reality, the silence oppressive and all-consuming, I realized the bitter truth. My attempts to rebuild, to find some semblance of redemption, had been nothing more than a fool's errand. Emily's vendetta, fueled by a betrayal that now seemed like a lifetime ago, had left me with nothing. No home, no job, no hope. The morning sun hadn't even cracked the horizon, but there I was, wide awake and plotting. It sounds like the start of a bad crime novel, doesn't it? Except, in my case, the crime was against me. Betrayal, they say, comes from those closest to you, and ain't that the truth? Alex, my once trusted confidant, had turned his back, siding with Emily and Michael. The trio made my life a living nightmare, painting me as the villain in their twisted narrative. I wasn't about to let their lies define me. No, I had a plan. Redemption was my endgame, a chance to clear my name and snatch back some semblance of dignity from the jaws of their deceit. My days and nights melded into one long surveillance operation. I was on a mission, collecting every scrap of evidence that Emily wasn't the saint she portrayed herself to be. My obsession with exposing her grew with each passing day, blurring the lines between determination and desperation. One night, driven by a reckless surge of courage, I found myself outside Emily's office. The plan was simple. Get in, find anything incriminating, and get out before anyone was the wiser. Except, plans rarely go as intended, do they? The moment I stepped inside, the weight of what I was doing hit me. This was breaking and entering. Sarah, what are you thinking? But the thought of turning back, of giving up, was even more unbearable. I rummaged through files and emails, my heart racing with every click and turn of the page. And then, the unmistakable flash of a security camera snapped me back to reality. Caught. The evidence of my trespassing now securely recorded. The police didn't knock on my door. They barged in, their judgment clear in their eyes. Arrested again. The words of the officer echoed in my mind as they led me away, a mix of pity and disdain coloring his tone. My image, already hanging by a thread, was now irreparably tarnished. The trial was a spectacle, the courtroom packed with hungry eyes eager to witness my downfall. The prosecution painted me as a jealous, vindictive ex-wife, hell-bent on destroying the happiness of others. My desperate search for justice was twisted into an act of petty revenge. The gavel fell, and with it, my hopes. Guilty. Sentenced to community service, a public display of my supposed penance. Community service was torture. Every day, I was a spectacle, recognized and harassed by those who saw me not as a person, but as a character in the drama of Emily's making. The whispers, the stares, the outright insults, it was a daily gauntlet, each word a reminder of how far I'd fallen. As I picked up trash on the side of the road, a part of me wondered if this was it. Was this the sum total of my existence now? Each piece of litter, a metaphor for my shattered life, discarded and overlooked. But amidst the humiliation and despair, a stubborn spark of defiance flickered. This wasn't the end of my story, it couldn't be. My downfall, orchestrated by those I once trusted, was but a chapter in my life, not the conclusion. With every piece of trash I collected, I vowed to myself. I would rise again, not for revenge, but for redemption. My journey was far from over, and though the road ahead was uncertain, I was determined to walk it with my head held high. The world had seen me at my lowest, but I would show them all, one day, how Sarah could rebuild from the ruins. The second I saw him, notebook in hand, that look in his eyes, half pity, half curiosity, I should have known. Reporters don't just stumble into stories like mine without looking to stir the pot. But there I was, desperate for a shred of understanding, or maybe just a chance to clear my name. Maybe this is it, I thought, my shot at redemption. How wrong I was. Sarah, I'm Tom, I've been following your story, it's, quite something. Mind if we talk? His voice was smooth, too smooth. I hesitated, then figured I had nothing left to lose. Maybe, just maybe, someone would finally hear my side without the cloud of judgment. We met at a coffee shop, the kind of place where whispers and side glances were the norm for me now. Tom's recorder sat on the table between us, a silent threat masquerading as a lifeline. I told him everything, the betrayal, the humiliation, my failed attempts at revenge. The words poured out, raw and unfiltered. For a moment, I let myself hope. When the article hit, it was like watching a car crash in slow motion. My phone buzzed relentlessly, texts and notifications flooding in, each one a dagger. Local woman's downfall, the headline screamed, a sordid tale of jealousy and vendetta. My heart sank. Tom's piece twisted my words, painting me as the villain in my own tragedy. The public ate it up, their thirst for scandal unquenchable. I confronted Tom, but he just shrugged, a predator satisfied with his kill. It's what sells, Sarah. I'm sorry you don't see it that way. His apology was a slap in the face, empty and cruel. The fallout was immediate. Any sympathy I might have garnered evaporated overnight. My phone, once a lifeline, became a source of endless torment. Emily's final warning came through clear and cold, a text that cut deeper than any article. Leave town, or it gets worse. This is your last chance. I looked around the small, cramped space I now called home, a far cry from the life I once knew. The walls seemed to close in on me, suffocating, a constant reminder of how far I'd fallen. With nothing left to hold on to, no job, no friends, just a name tarnished beyond recognition, I made the decision. Packing was a sobering affair, each item a relic of a past life. I left under the cover of darkness, the city that once held so much promise now a prison. The drive was long, each mile a step further from the chaos, but the weight of my past hung heavy. There was no real escape. The rearview mirror reflected a woman I barely recognized, a shell of the confident person I once was. The road ahead was uncertain, a path fraught with shadows of regret and what-ifs. But it was a path I had to take. Maybe, just maybe, somewhere out there was a place where I could start over, where my past wouldn't define my future. But as the city lights faded into the distance, a harsh truth settled in. You can change your scenery, your name, even your story, but some stains, they stick. And mine? It was indelible. The minute I stepped off the bus into the bustling streets of a city that promised anonymity, my heart was racing, a cocktail of fear and determination pumping through my veins. New city, new me, I muttered under my breath, clutching my single suitcase like a shield against the unknown. Gone were the luxurious trappings of my old life, replaced by a to lay low and rebuild from the ashes of my former self. Finding a job was priority one. With little money to my name and no references I could safely use without dragging my past into my present, I hit the pavement. The "help wanted" sign in the window of a quaint, somewhat run-down cafe seemed almost too good to be true. I can do this, I assured myself, pushing the door open with more confidence than I felt. The cafe owner, a kind-eyed woman named Marla, didn't ask too many questions. Maybe she saw something in me, a desperation or a determination that mirrored her own struggles. Or maybe she just needed an extra pair of hands. Either way, I was grateful. The work was hard, and the pay was minimal, but it was honest, and it was a start. Adjusting to this new, simpler life was a challenge. The shadows of my past loomed large, threatening to swallow the fragile peace I'd begun to carve out for myself. I kept my head down, focusing on the rhythm of daily tasks, allowing the monotony to lull the chaos in my mind into a semblance of calm. But the realization that my actions had consequences, a web of lies and betrayals that extended far beyond my own suffering, was a bitter pill to swallow. Regret gnawed at me, a constant reminder of the bridges I'd burned. Just when I thought I might be able to make a go of it, a mysterious figure from my past appeared, shattering the fragile bubble I'd constructed around my new life. It was a casual encounter on the street, a glance exchanged with someone whose face was hauntingly familiar, a ghost from a life I was desperate to forget. The recognition in their eyes was unmistakable, and with it came the threat of exposure. They wasted no time, confronting me in a shadowed alleyway one evening after my shift at the cafe. "Thought you could just start over, did you?" The figure taunted, their voice a chilling mix of amusement and menace. "Your past has a way of catching up with you, Sarah. You can't outrun it." The threat was clear. Expose my new life to the tattered remnants of my old one, or face the consequences. The fear that had been simmering beneath the surface boiled over, leaving me with a stark choice. Confront this figure from my past or lose everything I'd worked so hard to build. The standoff that followed was tense, a high-stakes game of cat and mouse played out in the shadows of the life I'd attempted to construct. I pleaded, I threatened, I begged, but in the end, it was futile. My new life was exposed, my lies laid bare for Marla and the small circle of acquaintances I'd begun to form to see. The fallout was swift and merciless. I lost my job, my reputation, such as it was, in my new home tarnished beyond repair. With no other options, I fled once again, leaving behind the fragments of a life that could have been, but never would be. As I boarded another bus, destination unknown, the weight of my regrets was a tangible presence, suffocating and inescapable. My story, a cautionary tale of betrayal and revenge, had come full circle. There was no redemption, no second chances. Just the road ahead, and the knowledge that some actions are beyond forgiveness, some bridges too thoroughly burned to ever